Hi friends, welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm really excited to share with you all some wintry book recommendations because we are now officially in winter. But today I'm really excited to share with you all some cozy wintry book recommendations that I feel like will be perfect for this time of year. Of course, I know that there are lots of you who also live in the southern hemisphere, so if you're there, I hope you're able to enjoy some of these reads anyways, and maybe you're looking for a frosty sort of atmosphere. I hope that these books are able to give you that snowy atmosphere if you're looking for it. Anyways, I have about 12 books I think that I want to share with you all today, and one of my first ever videos that I filmed on YouTube and shared here was a cozy winter fantasy book recommendations video. So I've tried to avoid overlapping the books as much as possible, but besides one or two, I think the other books weren't on that video. Of course, this winter book recommendations video wouldn't be complete without this lovely Christmassy holiday inspired sweater, and this is kindly gifted from Simple Retro. This is their Natalie sweater, I believe, and I've paired it with their Erin mock knit sweater underneath as well. I saw their gorgeous model wear it like this and I thought it was a sweet combo and want to keep you really toasty this season. So this video is sponsored by Simple Retro, and I'm really excited to share with you some of the other pieces. So the two colours that I received were apricot and in black as well, and ever since I received these two mock neck sweaters, I've been wearing them non-stop under all of my knit jumpers and vests because they add that extra warmth that I've been looking for ages. They're such a lovely layering piece, and I'm really glad that I decided to go for both apricot and black version because I feel like they'll cover and match a whole bunch of things in my wardrobe. And last but not least, this piece is slightly different. It's the Amara mock neck removable blouse and vest set, so it comes with both the blouse and the vest, but I've been really enjoying wearing the blouse underneath jumpers so you can see the little frill coming out of the top and out of the sleeves. I also think it'd be really sweet to wear the vest separately, so for example wearing it on top of the Erin sweaters. I love how wintry all these different pieces make me feel. So if you'd like any further information, I'll leave all the links to the outfits down below. And don't forget to use the code Ahya10 for 10% off your purchase next time. And without further ado, let's get into the video. For a very long time now, autumn has been my favourite season, but over the last 2 years, I've been slowly accepting that winter is slowly fighting for my top spot, one of my favourite seasons, and I just love how cozy it is during this time of year when you're inside and you're all toasty and warm and it's very cold outside. I've decided to split this video up into 4 different sections, and the very first section is wintry classics to read by the fireside. I had to include this category because I do love reading classics during the winter season, and first up we have The Willows in Winter. If this sounds familiar to you, it's by not Kenneth Grahame, who wrote The Wind in the Willows, but it's set in that same world and takes on the same characters but set in a winter backdrop. It's written by William Horde and it captures that same delightful whimsical feel that The Wind in the Willows gives, but with the added benefit that the entire book is set during a very snowy winter. It's marvellously magical, and I especially enjoyed the first couple of chapters in this book because it explores Mole in his little home surrounded by the fireside warming his feet up whilst the winter snow blankets the whole world outside, so it creates such a lovely atmosphere. I listened to this via audiobook recently and I don't own a physical copy of it, although I really do want one. It's enchanting and it features the same adorable and lovable characters as well as the very exasperating Toad, of course. So if you're looking for a wonderful cozy classic to read this time of year, I really highly recommend this one. Next up we have A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This book of course very famously follows Ebenezer Scrooge, who's probably one of the most famous literary characters in the modern world now. But during Christmas season in London, Scrooge is visited by 3 different ghosts who all help him to realize realise how miserable he really is. The overall character growth of Scrooge was one that I just really appreciated. I loved his character growth. I love the meanings that he discovers of life and the ways in which he can improve and give to others as well. The social commentaries are so powerful in this book, and it's one that really makes you reflect on your own shortcomings and the ways in which you can help others during this time of year. But also, because this book is set in December in London, this book really is able to capture the foggy essence and the chills of winter as well. I think I read this for the first time during school in like year 9 or something during English lessons, and it was only last year that I managed to reread this classic because my sister gifted it for Christmas last year. So I devoured this. It's of course very short, but yeah, so poignant, so powerful. And if you haven't read it yet, then this is a classic, a must read you need to pick up. I keep having to refill my cup of tea because it's so small, but next up we have the Magical Snowy Reads category. Whilst all the books here in this video do feature some sort of snowy atmosphere, I wanted to specifically dedicate a section to magical reads and ones that mixed fantasy into them. So first up we have The Wood at Midwinter by Susanna Clarke, and I featured this very recently in my latest video, I think. Susanna Clarke is a very prolific author, and the only book that I've read from her is Piranesi, other than this little short story now. But this is a Christmas themed novella from her, and it follows a girl called Meredith who is only very comfortable at either church or in the woods. And so one day on a snowy afternoon walk through the woods, she comes across this very mysterious figure who she's never met before, and meeting this person changes her life. I love that this story managed to capture that ethereal quality to winter, and it very much read like a folk tale. It's very short and it's wonderfully illustrated too, so if you're looking for a gift this time of year or want to just read really quickly by the fireside, I think this is a lovely one to cozy down with. Next up we have Ember and the Ice Dragons by Heather Fawcett, who of course wrote Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies as well. I did mention this in the other wintry book recommendations video I filmed earlier this year, but if you haven't read it and you're looking for a middle grade fantasy book that takes place in the most wonderfully snowy atmosphere, then you have to pick up this book. It follows a young girl called Ember who is really a dragon, but in order for her identity to be kept a secret and protect her from harm, her father, who is a magician, turns her into a human, except it's not foolproof because in certain temperatures, if it gets too hot, Ember catches on fire. And so the solution they come up with is to send Ember to Antarctica, where it will be so cold that hopefully she won't catch on fire. But she quickly realizes that there is this annual tradition in Antarctica called the Winter Glass Hunt. Ember is a fire dragon, and so when she finds out that the ice dragons in Antarctica are being hunted for their jeweled scales each year during this hunt, she is enraged and she is very determined to sabotage it from the inside. I love that this book had a historical setting, and it takes place, well, the first couple of chapters take place in a town that very much feels inspired by Oxford and Cambridge, and so you've got old buildings and libraries and being on rooftops overlooking gardens. But then later on you get the entire book pretty much is set in Antarctica, and it's snowy, it's cold, it's icy. This book stood out to me not only because it had the best descriptions of a winter atmosphere, as you'd expect from Emily Wilde, from Heather Fawcett, but it also had magical dragons and the cutest friendships as well. I really hope that Heather Fawcett is able to revisit this world and create another book in this series, because this is currently just a standalone. Next up is a YA fantasy book that I recently started reading, and it's Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I did just finish book 1 1 and I'm in the middle of, well, I'm almost finished with book 2 Legendary, but this series is so perfect for this time of year, especially the first book. It follows two sisters, one called Scarlet in the first book and then Donatella in the second. But ever since she was young, Scarlet has been wanting to visit the Caraval event that takes place each year, and it's only open to those who are invited, but the twist is that the guests who are invited to actually play along and be a part of the event. It's believed to be filled with magic, and so when Scarlet is invited, she of course wants to visit and be a part of the show. But as Scarlet gets deeper and deeper into Caraval, she realizes that things aren't quite as they seem, and it's all about her uncovering the mysteries behind it all. The whole book felt like an experience for sure, and it's also got some lovely, gorgeous romance as well. This year's game takes place on this island that is covered with snow and it's dripping with magic everywhere. And so this very first one is perfect for the winter season. The whole point of this book is that not only the setting but also the actors who work as part of Caraval, they are all very ambiguous and you're never really sure whether to believe them or not. So it creates a very confusing sort of atmosphere. So I remember reading on Goodreads, a lot of people were saying that they didn't like the setting, that it wasn't clear enough for them, which I totally understand. But if you're looking to get lost in a maze-like sort of fantasy adventure with these characters, then I do really think this is a great one to pick up. Next up is Upon a Frosted Star by M.A. Kushnaya, and it's a fantasy retelling of Swan Lake mixed with the vibes of The Great Gatsby as well. This one reads more like a magical realism book than heavy fantasy, and whilst I also included this one, this is the only other book I think I included in the other video, I wanted to mention it again because I feel like it doesn't get that many recommendations, but I feel like it's one of the best atmospheric reads if you want that frosty, chilly, magical winter read. But in this retelling, on the very first snowfall of each year throughout the city, there is an invitation that is scattered around for people to find, and it simply says tonight. So when struggling artist Forster comes across one invitation one year, he takes it and he is entirely taken up by the glamorous evening that is displayed by this sort of party that takes place. It's a notorious annual party that is put on each year by somebody whose identity is very much unknown, and intrigued by this and the magic behind it all, Forster goes into finding out who's behind it. The book really is an ode to winter and snowfall and how creepy yet ethereal and otherworldly winter can be. I loved how lyrical it was, and it almost felt like I was watching a movie pan out before me. There are so many quotable passages of winter. If you're a winter enthusiast, you need to get this book. The way the story developed wasn't my favourite, and I definitely enjoyed the first half of the book more than the latter half. However, if you are looking for the atmospheric read, and that's what you want this season, then this book is definitely something you need to read. In this next category, we have Cold Days and Nights. For many people across the world, winter represents genuine hardship and struggles against nature, the force of nature, and the colder, harsher climate. So whilst I love reading about magical atmospheres and beautiful snowy landscapes, it's also important to remind ourselves, or remind myself at least, that often for many it is a very difficult time of year. So first in this particular category, we have Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. This is a book that I finished very recently. I think it's one of my most recently finished books, and I really enjoyed it. It's set in 1985 in a small Irish town, and we follow a coal merchant called Bill Furlong. This short story takes place on the cusp of Christmas and on Christmas itself, and we see Bill, who as a coal merchant, it's his busiest time of year. So on one of his trips out to the nearby convent, he makes a coal delivery, but on this particular day he makes a discovery that forces forces him to encounter difficult truths and forces him to remember things from his past as well. In many ways, it reminded me a lot of A Christmas Carol, but if it was set in 1985 in Ireland instead. The story establishes difficult truths that people have to come face to face with, the ways in which the church can control, often with a lot of hypocrisy, different towns and people, and in the face of all that hypocrisy, what it really means to be a Christian. So in the lead up to Christmas, we see Bill having this internal struggle and conflict over whether he should overlook the reality in favor of comfort. I feel like it's a modern classic now that should be revisited each Christmas season, much like A Christmas Carol for me anyways, where there's so much to glean from and to learn from this particular short story. It's a very touching historical fiction novella, and if you're looking for a very short story to read this Christmas season, then I feel like this book is a really good one to read. Next up is Winter in Sokcho by Elise Chua du Sapin, and I believe this was originally a French novel that was translated. The author is French-Korean, and this book takes place in Sokcho, which is a town in Korea, or a city in Korea, that over winter season it becomes very quiet and is usually a holiday destination. So during the summer it's super busy, and in the winter it's very harsh climate and it becomes eerily quiet. It's a town set in between North and South Korea, and we follow a young French-Korean woman who works as a receptionist at this very tired guest house. One day, one of the guests who arrive is very unexpected, and he's a French cartoonist who's here to look for some inspiration for his next work. The two strike a very uneasy relationship, and she offers to give him a sort of tour, or to act as a tour guide around Sokcho, but she quickly realizes that the cartoonist sees things in a very different way from the way that she understands Sokcho. So it's a contemporary book about different identities, shared identities, divided selves. It's also about a lot of alienation that someone can experience. I feel like the way that winter was described and depicted here in this novel was very unfiltered. Everything was very raw. There's a certain bitter quality to the style of writing, which is very gripping, and it mirrors the harsh landscapes of Korea in winter as well. And whilst this wasn't my favourite translated novel, I do feel like the author did a great job at being able to present how cruel winter can be for lots of different areas across the world, and how harsh Korean winters can be as well. So if you're looking to read about a place that you perhaps may have never heard about before, then Winter in Sokcho might be one that interests you. And the final book in this category is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. It follows Sam and Sadie, who are two kids who meet in a hospital gaming room in 1987. Their desire to escape from the difficult realities of a hospital encouraged them to spend even more time in this hospital gaming room together. However, as time passes, Sam and Sadie lose connection until one day, 8 years later, randomly they seemingly bump into each other in a very crowded train station in New York. So the two of them reconnect, and they immediately share again their love for gaming, and in fact they team up together to come up with this gaming company where they produce games. This book is about everything that Sam and Sadie go through in their individual lives, but also in the times where they share their worlds together as well. And it's a story like none other that I've read. I really enjoyed it, and it was initially a 5-star read. You can tell by all the tabs as well. But basically, as I reached the final couple 100 pages, I thought that there were a couple chapters that I felt like didn't need to be there necessarily. I didn't particularly enjoy them anyways, but I know so many people gave this book 5 stars, and I completely understand why. You can't help but feel so much for these characters and everything that they have to go through together. The reason why I'm recommending this book though for the winter time is because it starts in December, and a lot of it, the first couple of chapters anyways, it takes place throughout winter and in New York as well, so it's obviously very cold. I don't own very many hardcover copies of books, but this cover is just stunning. And the final category we have is winter in all its glory. I have two non-fiction reads here which I feel it really present winter in all its glory, in that you see the force of winter and its harsh reality, but also how beautiful and magnificent winter can be. So first up we have A Woman in the Polar Night by Christiane Ritter, who was an Austrian painter, and so this book was written in German and then later translated into English. It's a memoir that I'm currently in the middle of reading and it's phenomenal, guys. You really need to pick it up. As the title suggests, it follows Christiane Ritter on a years-long expedition in the Arctic as she goes to join her husband, who has spent the last couple of years exploring the Arctic. Initially, she thinks that it's going to be quite a romantic experience. She's going to have so much time to just sleep and to read as many books as she'd like. But upon arrival, she realizes that really they're in the middle of nowhere with no settlements for the next hundreds of miles, and they're very much isolated. And so you see her come face to face with the reality that this next year is going to be extremely difficult and bleak. But then as time passes, she grows an appreciation for how beautiful the Arctic can be and how magnificent its otherworldly beauty is, but also a deeper meaning and understanding about the sanctity of life as well. She describes a serenity and peace that can only be experienced after having lived in the Arctic for a year. So I'm really thoroughly enjoying this memoir, and I hope that you guys will be able to pick it up this season too. And the last book I have to recommend to you all is All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot. There is an entire television series based on James Herriot's books, and I actually was really enjoying watching the first season of that, although I haven't made it very far, but it was a lovely adaptation. I haven't read any of the other volumes. I think there are 5 in total that they've released, and this is the first one, but this is the only one I've read and I really enjoyed it. And it follows James Herriot, who recently graduated from veterinary school, and he is offered a job in a practice in a rural village in Yorkshire in the 1930s. You see him as he tries to adapt to his very new surroundings and new people and strange colleagues and clients. And because it's set in Yorkshire, James Herriot does a fantastic job of describing the wonderful nature that surrounds the veterinary practice and all these different farmers as well. We see him as he understands that winter can be a very difficult time for not only farmers but also for vets, because they have to face being outdoors in all sorts of weather conditions throughout winter and just all seasons in general. So there are definitely the more somber notes and stories here alongside the more humorous anecdotes. So if you're looking for a non-fiction read this winter set in the English countryside with animals, and also a small romance in it as well, then I do think this is a lovely book to pick up. Those are all the books I wanted to recommend, but I have one more that I'm currently in the middle of reading, but I've only read like a chapter of it, so I can't really recommend it yet, but I did want to put it on your radars just in case you're looking for a holiday romance. And this book is called A Holiday by Gaslight by Mimi Matthews. It's a historical fiction, Victorian inspired romance set in London. You follow a very dutiful daughter called Sophie Apposite, and she's willing to marry someone outside of her class if it means it will bring in wealth for her family. And so she has this 2-month courtship with a man named Mr. Edward Sharp, and things don't turn out very well for them and there seems to be no chemistry, so she ends it on the belief that he has no interest in her whatsoever. But for Mr. Sharp, he's been following this etiquette book and he's been following it to the letter, so he doesn't understand why Sophie isn't interested in him. So he's feeling very hurt and the courtship is severed. However, one day, I believe for like a Christmas dinner, he's invited to her family home once more for a second chance, and their relationship blossoms for real. I initially saw this book recommended by Darling Desi, I think, and it was just I love all her book recommendations, so when she pointed this one out as a Christmas book romance story, I knew I wanted to pick it up and I can't wait to finish reading it. Sometimes during Christmas all you want is a lovely cozy romance story for all the feels, but I feel like a lot of the Christmas romances that are out these days, or at least the contemporary ones, they just aren't quite what I'm looking for. But if you have any other Christmas holiday romances that you feel like are really beautifully written, then please let me know because I am looking for more. But that was everything in today's video, and I hope you all really enjoy the different book recommendations. As I mentioned in the intro, winter is one of my favorite seasons to read, so I think I'll be creating a winter TBR video as well, so that you will know what sort of books I'm hoping to read this season. So I hope you all have a lovely, cozy and wintry reading season, and I believe that this video is going to go up just before Christmas as well, so Merry Christmas to you all as well. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye friends!